Hello, hello. Welcome to the Five Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. I interview the top commercial real estate investors and industry experts so you can learn from their experiences. So if you're an investor, a high W-2 earner, or real estate or tech sales professional that wants to invest in real estate without having to manage properties or leave your day job, then this podcast is for you. Or if you're already investing in real estate, but you're doing it part-time and you want to become a full-time multifamily or full-time commercial real estate investor, this podcast is for you too. You're going to learn a ton. You will learn from real-life multifamily investors and other professionals in the industry. They're going to share their blueprints for success, and I'm super excited that you're here. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, hello. This is Abel Pacheco, your host for the Five Talents Podcast. We are super excited today to have yet another amazing guest on our show, Mr. Sam Freshman. Mr. Sam Freshman has just been one of those individuals that I met this year that has a ton of expertise and a wealth of knowledge in our space that I know you can't help but get a lot of expertise from. So I'm going to introduce him a little bit more as we go through this, but at a highest level, he's done in one shape, form, or fashion or another in real estate, practicing law since 57 with an emphasis on real estate. He served as counsel in the formation of well over 100 real estate syndications. He's a general partner of a lot of syndicates in controlling property with well in excess of $400 million. And that's just scratching the surface. So let me turn it over to Sam for a second. Sam, can we start with just a quick introduction? Tell us who you are and what you do, and we'll start a great conversation.
Okay, well, I come originally from Michigan. I decided when I was graduating high school that I wanted to go to California. They said the girls were a little better looking there. And I went to Stanford. In those days, anybody could get into Stanford that did not live in California. If they lived in California, it was a little bit of a problem. But graduated undergraduate and in 1954, and had finished also at the same time my first year of law school at Stanford Law School. You could do that in those days. I went to law school because I started out pre-med and I hated it. And my father said, well, go to law school and I'll teach you business later. And so I did. And then when I graduated, I said, Dad, you didn't tell me what kind of law I should do. My father had just moved to California about 2 weeks before my graduation. And I said, should I be a tax lawyer? Should I be a litigator? What kind of law should I do? He said, and that's probably the founding statement of my success. He said, practice law. That's where all the money's made in California.
Wow.
So I opened the law office and started doing law and playing around with the law on the side. And after about 10 years of buying properties, and those days downtown LA was dead, absolutely dead. There were high-rise bank buildings that were 13 floors, 12 of which were vacant. And so I started buying those for like $1 million and selling them after a few years for $2 million and thinking I was a real hotshot. However, after about 10 years of that, I looked back and every one of those damn buildings was worth a lot more than I sold them for. So then I just said, I'm going to be buy and hold from this point on. And that's what happened for the next 60 years, was we just bought generally fixed up. Occasionally we trade on up, but we um, mainly found we could make more money by holding onto a property and improving it than we could doing ground up construction. So I never very much into ground up construction, but a lot into value adding. And I've done just about every different kind of property there is, bank buildings, apartment buildings, industrial, you name it, and we've done it. But over time, I've settled into multifamily.
Yeah.
And the problem with multifamily right now is that the cap rates in California, anyway, in most good neighborhoods, is around 3.5%, 4%. So we've spread out and do a lot of our business in Nevada and Arizona, the oceanfront states, the 11 states on the West Coast that we buy it. But over the 60 years, I had property all over the United States. And for about 30 years, I was partners as well with Northwestern Mutual Life. And you mentioned 100 units. Our portfolio criteria was 600 units per property, or we didn't buy. And of course, most of it was their money.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was a great deal. And I'd say when it comes back, you should, if you're starting out, you should try for that. I'd put up 10% of the capital. They'd put up 90%. They get an 8% pref, and then we're 50-50 beyond that.
Wow, there you go.
Sam,
let me, if I can pause you here, because this is, so for those that are listening, when you sit down with the Godfather of Syndication, someone who's been doing syndication for years and years and years, what we're essentially doing is we're pulling together a group of people. Me and Sam were talking about it just before we started hitting the record. He was like, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I try to pull experts, people that I believe are amazing operators, amazing construction management people, project management people, people that are great analysts, people that are, just really quality individuals, and build the best possible team around a deal." And he's, this is exactly what we're talking about. Is it's very simple. There's a lot of complexity that happens, but in all, simplest forms, we're coming together, the brightest people we can find, and pulling our capital, pulling our resources together to buy something bigger than what we would have been able to buy on our own. And so, Sam, that's, this is kind of what you've been doing for all these years. And sorry to interrupt you, but that's what I'm hearing. And you're laying this out the way you used to do those deals, or the opportunities that were there, correct?
That's correct. And the main thing that is constant in the real estate market is change. There were periods of time when the thing to buy was shopping centers. And during that period, I did very well. I'm very tempted to go back to it because shopping centers today are selling at 8 caps versus 4 caps, or less for apartments. Now, 10 years ago, I sold most of my shopping centers and put the money into apartments. That worked out very well.
That was a good call 10 years ago. That's awesome.
And if I was younger, I'm 88 years old now, but if I was younger, I'd probably switch backwards now and trade because I could take an apartment building and get rid of it at 4% and put that money into 8, 9, 10% cap rate properties if I would do shopping centers. One of the things people ask me about is the future of shopping centers. And I think that it's got a good future. But it depends, of course, like it does in any property. You have a bunch of things on your checklist. The most important thing with a shopping center is how many cars a day go by that property. And we look for 45,000 or more is the first thing to look for. In comparison, with a apartment building, it doesn't matter at all how many cars go by. It matters how good is the school system. You want a school system with a rating as much as possible on the higher end. The ratings go from 1 to 10. Site for the information is great schools. The information is free. You call up great schools, you give them the address, and they'll tell you the rating. 10 is the highest. Great schools. 10 is the highest rating. So,
and that's a website for those that don't know that. You can go to the Great Schools website, Google it, and you can get this information. It's free to everybody. Okay, go ahead.
That's right. And generally, we're looking for there at least 4 or 5. If we get an 8, we go nuts.
Yeah, you're excited. Yeah, and the school system, it drives people that want to live there. It's a great area, and that's where their children, are going to school. And so, it also, if they have a good school system, it's usually everything else falls into place, right? Crime and median income, all that good stuff. Right?
It's a quick way to start your. So we looked at the schools. Then the other thing we look at is the income level. Because obviously we're making our money by improving the property. We want to be sure that the community can afford to pay the higher price. So you want something where the income levels are somewhat higher than currently supporting the properties. And each type of property has a different set of rules. We have a list of 13 rules for the apartments. We like pitched roofs because they're cheaper to maintain, and so on down the line.
Yeah.
We got an entirely different set of rules for office buildings and another set of rules for.
I love it. When you've been doing something as long as you have with as much success as you had, you've been able to document a few things. And let me get to a spoiler alert on this one. There's no way Sam's going to give us all of these nuggets in a 45-minute show, but you can pick up some of Sam's books. He's a published author. The Principles of Real Estate Syndication. He's on the 3rd plus edition. He's written the Real Estate Finance.
I'm on the 6th edition.
6th edition, great.
The original one was 1971.
I love it. Principles of Real Estate Syndication. So 6th edition. He's written Real Estate Finance and Syndication Glossary, The Smartest Way to Save Money, and over 20 I don't know how many. This is probably outdated too, but many countless published articles over the years. And then Sam's also an expert witness in real estate matters and banking. So he's the guy that the courts call on every once in a while too. So esteemed background. No way we're going to hit it all, but man, thank you, Sam, just for continuing to share.
That's okay.
So you were saying every asset class has its different rules: shopping center, multifamily, land development, whatever those rules may be for each and every asset class.
Yeah. So when you're starting out, you pick your asset class and then you go and dig up all the rules.
Yeah.
And most people in real estate are very friendly, and you just go to the guy that's got the best reputation in town and ask him to give you an hour. And,
yeah.
And then I would say 90% of the time, they'll be happy to do so. And, but there's a lot of work, because you make your money not when you sell, but you make your money when you buy. That's going to determine how your going to come out on the back end.
Yeah. Let me say two things here, because what you said is it's so simple that some people will really miss this. What I heard Sam say was, you got to network. You have to go to the individual or the person that has already had some success and go ask them for a little bit of their time, right? Now, you may not get it all the time. You know, he said 90%. Maybe those individuals, the most successful, are usually the ones that want to share a little bit of the nuggets. So, number one, network. Number two, the other part was when you're saying that as you're putting this stuff together, you've got to figure out a way to essentially learn that asset class at a time. You can't be an expert in every simple, in everything. You've got to learn one component at a time, which is, I think that's great. So anyway, sorry, Sam, I'm like loving everything so far.
No, that's it. And I've been fortunate that been able to do it on the side, a few things. I've formed and own a bank, a title company. I've lectured at all the major universities in Southern California, and just had a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The main thing, which was a little tough, because I fall in love with a different type of property, and then that's good for a number of years, and then it switches to something else. And shopping centers at one time were the best places to go, and probably today it would be a good time to go back to them, because there are not too many people that are really going after them, and the cap rates are that I'm seeing. Well, my wife doesn't like them, so that sort of makes it hard. But I've seen cap rates today 8 to 11%.
Wow.
Whereas in a apartment, you're getting maybe somewhere between a 3 and a 5.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, not so much technical, but I heard you say, well, your wife doesn't like them. How involved has your wife been throughout the years in y'all's quote unquote partnership? How long have y'all been married? Tell me a little bit about that background, just for all of us younger ones that are, I've only been married for 12 years. So any wisdom I can take in my real estate business here that I will apply.
Well, we got married in 1957.
Mm-hmm.
And we were engaged from the time we met till we were engaged 8 days. And so we've had a fairly long run.
I love it.
And what she did was, I just graduated from college, and I wanted to give her some buttons and stuff for my club and all that. And she said, no, it's a ring or nothing.
Nice.
She's a much better negotiator than I am.
I love it. And so y'all been married throughout this whole time, and that's a lot of years. And so what type of involvement in the business has she played?
Yeah, we have 4 children and 7 grandchildren.
Oh, congratulations. Praise God. That's amazing.
Well, we wanted more, but we sort of, that's as far as we could go.
Beautiful family, my brother. Beautiful family. And in your, what advice can you give to the married couples that are doing the business together, that are trying to work out and create it together?
Well, I think I'm not so sure, because there's different ways of people doing this. I think each person has to find their own way. It's a lot more specialized than buying a property. You want someone that is going to be there with you all the way through. This is sort of the basic things that, in a way, what's your attitude toward having children? We both wanted to have, we only ended up with 4. We originally thought we'd try and get 6. So we were together on the major. In fact, most of the business part of it just developed as we went along. But the important things to us anyway were family, developing family and wanting family. And that was our goal. Other people may have other targets.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're aligned on the big ones, the smaller ones will fall in line. And if you're about that family, your family unit is what I heard is, and if all of the big ones fall in line, the smaller ones over time will kind of develop. And that's been great. Well, congratulations on your success in marriage and your beautiful family, in addition to the real estate success you've had. Are your children in the real estate business now as well?
Well, my grandson is being groomed to follow me, and my children, some have worked there part-time in the summer. All of them are familiar with it and been there during the summer at some time in their lives. And they all know the company pretty well, the business pretty well. And I think there's a tendency on their side to consider that as well when it comes to investments and so on.
Got it. Yeah, that's amazing. And okay, so I'm gonna pivot a little bit, right? Because you have this tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom that we're just gonna scratch the surface, right? So why don't we give some wisdom that maybe applies to all of us, right? Real estate investors, we're all looking for at least our group. Let's call it commercial real estate investors. I have a lot of multifamily folks. We have a lot of syndicators, people that are raising capital. We have a lot of people that do operations. People are all working together and doing what we do. What are some of the advice or knowledge you can give somebody that's, just starting out in the business? What can they do to apply to have a lot of success?
Well, the first thing I'd suggest to somebody that's starting out is for them to find a place to learn and go to work for somebody in an area that they'd be interested in, whether it's like industrial property, whether it's apartments or shopping centers or any one of the 8 or 9 different types of property. Right now, I think some of the opportunities are a little off the main track. Today, I would be looking pretty hard at things that are a little different, special kinds of things. Mobile home parks. Mobile home parks have jumped way up recently. And where can you buy living quarters for $1,000 or $2,000 and pay $300 a month for the space? There's I think a great opportunity there in mobile home parks, rec vehicle parks. Some of these more off the main line.
Yeah, a little bit off the beaten path for most people saying, "Oh, I want to buy this beautiful apartment complex," and you're saying mobile home parks and that kind of thing. But people are going to need an affordable spot to live, and if you can figure out a way to make this in a scalable model, and improve the situation, increase rents, then they're going to win, right?
That's right. And there's a tremendous difference in the cost of the property. You have Beverly Hills, where a decent property is probably $10 million, And then again, you can go up to Riverside and find a nice home for, oh, maybe 700,000. It's a pretty nice home when you get out into the far suburbs. So you have to look at what your resources are at the time. I can think back that even though I was buying 12 and 13-story buildings, I was buying them empty. I couldn't afford any buildings that were full. I had to create that. So that was where the opportunity lay. And I'm always running into people that are doing something a little unique that I hadn't thought of. And where it's hard to find things that haven't been discovered, but there's still stuff out there where if you want to go out into the hinterland, so to speak, you can still get decent returns, decent opportunities.
What significance can you put on networking over in your success over the years?
Networking? Well, real estate is pretty unique. So you generally do need a large group of sellers and buyers. It's not like manufacturing widgets or something. It's personal. It's all personal. I can tell you a story that happened to me in my beginnings. I decided to try and buy a very large property. And I went to Northwestern Mutual Life, which is one of the major companies in the country. And as I mentioned earlier, structured.
When you say large, how large was the property?
Oh, it was about 300-400 units.
Okay.
For somebody that was starting, that was
300 to 400, units, big a deal. Okay.
Almost all the properties I had with Northwestern over a period of years, I think they averaged about 500 or 600 units.
Okay.
But this was my very first deal of any size. I had bought a few office buildings downtown, but nothing like this project. And they said, okay, we like your project. We like you. We'll put up 90% of the money and give us 8% return first. And then we'll split everything 50-50 after that.
Mm-hmm.
And you only have to put up 10% of the money. And I forget what it was. Maybe it was like those days, 60 years ago, maybe it was $500,000 or something, which was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Said, unfortunately, I don't have the $500,000.
Yeah.
And the guy, they don't do this anymore, by the way, so don't expect to get it anymore.
I'm writing it down as if, hey, this may be my next offer that I put out to investors, but go ahead.
And he said, go downstairs, talk to this guy, tell him we're going to invest, and we'll lend you the $500,000 on a personal note.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was how I got started.
Man, so literally in this largest deal, your first, large property, you're going to one of the biggest entities, asking them to fund 90% of the purchase of the down payment, but still 90% of it. I said, hey, if you put in 10%, I'm in it. And you didn't have that. So you went kind of put it together, personal line. Someone said, yep, I'm in. And so you got in this deal with essentially no money down.
Yeah, that was where it was. Today, they'd want 10 or 20%. But in those days, it was more personalities and so on. Everything was, Today, things are a little more structured.
Yeah.
And,
Here's the numbers. Here's the analysis. Here's what the data says. Here are the trends in the specific
oh yeah,
market. Okay. Here's the hard qualifications. You don't meet those hard qualifications. Well, enter also. So this is the beauty. Let me pause for a second too, because what Sam outlined, right, is first big deal. And you figured out a way, a very creative way to get your first deal done. And you're essentially a part owner, a 50-50 percentage part owner of all of the profits after you paid back an 8% preferred return. So for those that are listening, that preferred return, it basically means contractually agreed to they're getting 8% return on their money first. It's not a contract to say you're gonna guaranteed to make money, because the lawyers will tell you no, but it's pretty much, it's the closest thing you're gonna get to a guaranteed of return. It's I'll pay you first. And then after that, who's splitting the profits 50-50. But that, as you continue to roll, this is where syndication, somebody like me, maybe I can't get the sweetheart personal line of credit deal anymore, maybe not throughout the entity. But what I can do is I can leverage a great team of people to put together that 10%. And now we go and try to work together because there's 3, 4, 5 of us, whatever, on the general partner team. And is this how you kind of, started working syndication or found it, or how, maybe tell me a little bit about from this first deal to, enter 100, plus syndications and just kind of keep rolling.
well, that was I had done some smaller things, and as I say, I think there are other ways now you're going to have to. I think there's big opportunities in value adding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of failed hotels right now. And if you have the skill and so on, um, and, but remember, one of my friends told me when I was in the middle of it, the hotel business is not the real estate business. It's more like a business enterprise, like a restaurant or something of that nature. And, so it's a different uh, uh, a different background. You're looking at something different. But the main thing is being careful, doing all your homework, and remembering that what you're doing at the acquisition stage is what's going to affect what happens later. It just, it's not always that easy. Right now, it looks like we're heading for inflation, and that's going to mean that the property prices are going to go up substantially. But in terms of real value, it may be less than it was, because inflation is the devaluation of the dollar. And that's something I think everybody should study a little bit, because it looks we're going in that direction.
Yeah. The devaluation of the dollar, our loaf of bread has doubled. Our real estate is more expensive. And my quote unquote power that I used to have of saving $1 million or having $1 million in the bank is not so favorable anymore. And I'd rather be in an income generating asset that's increasing in price as well. And so my dollar stays stronger if it's invested in a commercial asset that's kicking off cash all the time.
And that's adjusting to the market as it goes.
And it's adjusting in the market as it goes. Yeah. So its value stays stronger than my weakening dollar, essentially, right?
Somebody was arguing with me yesterday because I said, well, we can get a 10% return on this shopping center. He said, yes, but at the rate the inflation's going, you're if you've got a 10-year lease, the value of the property is actually going down each year because the rent is fixed basically for the 10 years. So there's all these different kind of things that have to go back and forth through to figure out what is best for you on this property.
Got it. Okay, very good. Well, I think we'll spend some time. That sounds like another spending some time educating ourselves, learning a little bit. I see this huge, bookshelf of books in your background.
Oh,
What importance would you put on education and finding new knowledge and over on your success over the years?
well, I I was just a regular student. I was not, A plus or anything. Um, but I think basics, um, costs and how you spend your time uh, are important. Uh, your health is important. Doesn't do any good to make a lot of money and then get and be sick all the time. So I think keeping a sort of well-rounded life. By the way, I haven't read more than maybe 10% of those books, and but they're all about basics. How to work with people. Uh, they're all primarily sort of how-to books. That would be something that I wanted to do, and I really didn't know too much about how that or how to deal with people. So I'd get some books.
No, I love, one of my favorites is always Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
And yes,
Just a
thank you.
tried and true classic. I saw you smile. You've read it a time or two?
Oh yes, oh yes. The, and there's a lot of those in different areas. How to manage people, uh, how to negotiate. Um, the That's important. How to negotiate.
All right. Well, very good. Hello, hello. You're listening to the Five Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. If you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you're serious about achieving financial freedom. Are you ready to create your own path through multifamily investing for yourself and your family? Then I know you're going to appreciate our Investor's Guide to Multifamily Investing. It's titled Tackling Commercial Real Estate the Easy Way. We use this guide to invest ourselves in $93 million worth of real estate. So we're going to show you the basic mechanics of multifamily syndications and how to evaluate your next passive investment opportunity. So the best part, if you subscribe to our podcast now, leave us a review and a rating. I'm going to give you a free copy of our ebook. So please take a moment to do that now. Once you've done that, go to 5tcre.com/ebook, 5tcre.com/ebook. Make sure to let us know you left a review and we're going to send you a free copy. So thank you so much for subscribing to the Five Talents Podcast. We really appreciate it. Well, Sam, I truly appreciate your time. Let me ask, there's a few things before we go. I want to direct any of our listeners or viewers in the place that they should either reach out to learn more about the books that you have or some insights or education, knowledge, anything that you have out there. Where should we go? Do you have a website that we should all hit if we want to stay closer to, you and your world a little bit? Where can we connect with you if we wanted to?
Well, I have like everybody does, address that they can use sfreshman@standardmanagement.com.
Okay.
And you can send me an email, and either I or someone in my organization, depending on what your questions are, try and direct you to somebody.
And I know you're on LinkedIn too. Heidi was very helpful with me as
Yes,
well.
going to Heidi needed runs our LinkedIn, so you can get a lot of people are involved in that, um, and she's a good place to start. The properties, just if you got a question, you can just send it off, and I'll try and get it to the right person. And
Very good.
that, you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
gotta turn over rocks.
Just keep
Turn
getting
over.
after. I love it. Thank you, Sam. And
Yeah.
then what
There's a couple books.
yes,
One is
please.
called "Be Old, Never Be Old Enough to Know Better," and you can get that through Amazon. It's not very expensive. It's paperback, and it's all my stories about things I've learned. Never be old enough to know better. That's the best book I've ever written. I've written a series called "The Smartest Way to Save," which you can also get through the regular book brokers. Smartest Way to Save Big, The Smartest Way to Save More. That's a series of 3 books. Because, see, when somebody comes to you to invest, the first question they're going to ask is not where the property is. It's not how much you're going to make. It's how much are you, the sponsor, putting in? How much skin in the game? You've probably heard that phrase, skin in the game.
Yeah.
Because they figure if you're going to put in a relatively important amount of money in relation to your resources and take some risks with them, then they'll more likely to go along. So to get that, in these books, the Smartest Way to Save series is to help you. How do you generate that over a period of time?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you can do, I know we're running out of time, but this is probably
We have more time. You feel free.
Okay. Most important thing is when you're starting out, you want to tie up with somebody uh, very, very successful and very, very smart, like Abel. And so then when someone asks you, you're a partner with Abel in a deal, okay? You don't have very much money at all. Abel's going to put in $500,000. You're going to put in $50,000. Well, they ask, you don't say what you're doing. You say what the sponsors are doing. The sponsors are putting up,
$500 million. Yeah.
$500,000
$550K.
or
Yeah.
$1 million or whatever it is, a major chunk of it, and you're one of the sponsors. And most people don't dig down to say, well, what portion of that? They
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
say, okay, you got some money in the deal. And that's probably the most, if you're in the syndication business, that's one of the first things you got to learn is how to raise money.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell them as well. And you have your techniques as well. So what I did was create the impression that I've got a lot of my money riding in it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's true. It was a lot, but it was a small amount in relation to the other people.
Absolutely. There's some goodness here. One, you want to partner with the best possible people you can have in your network. So partnering with. Number 2, when you're working together, we're working together as a team. And then the first thing that you mentioned, Sam, was, and your book, how to tell me the title again, How to Save More. What was the title?
The Smartest Way to Save.
The Smartest Way to Save. And you can find that on Amazon. And I just put out something yesterday where I was taught, that 60% is what you should live off of your earnings. If you make 60, whatever dollar you make, learn to live off 60% of it. 10% to go pay back debt if you have some debt, 10% to save, and 10% to tithe, right? And I go, okay, well, there's a good chunk, or 20% to debt, sorry. And if you can figure out how to pay off your debt and then save and tithe, you're giving, you're saving, but you got to save that seed. Otherwise you won't have anything to invest. Right. So figure out a way to save it. And we're not talking about saving and just leaving money and hoping that it grows. We're talking about saving a seed and then planting the seed. So you've definitely planted a good number of seeds, Mr. Freshman, over the years, huh?
Oh, yeah, but if, you've heard the phrase due diligence. You can never do too much due diligence.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's also another side to it. I tended to be probably a little tighter than I should have, because the best deals got away. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And it's always, well, I could have done this or I could have done that, and I should have probably spent a little more time on this last deal because somebody else bought it and turned it around. There's a lot of action taking place in the secondary market, as I mentioned earlier. I think we've done a lot in the last 10 years in Nevada, which I remember 10 or 15 years ago. Maybe it was about probably 15 years ago when I started there. Prior to that, I would have never, ever thought of going to Nevada and gambling and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's just a matter of spending a little more effort in looking at some of this stuff, maybe going a little further away from your home base than you'd like to. The due diligence is where all the basic work is done, that time that you're making a decision whether or not to buy the property.
Yep. And I kind of 100% agree with you, right? We got to look at the numbers, look at the data, look at, our offer. Then you got physical due diligence and inspection, and then your business plan to execute it, and all this work up front to make sure you're, what you said at the very beginning, we got to buy them right. I mean, it's basic information, but it's absolutely 100% necessary. That's why you hear people like Sam say it. And then, spending that time. Another thing I think you mentioned was the other side of it is you're so conservative, or maybe you had a lot of due diligence that maybe you saw some projects that got away, and those are some of the best deals. In your real estate time, that's why your aim is to buy and hold now, though. Because I remember on our first conversation, you mentioned, maybe you could tell us the story that kind of got you to go into buy and hold. You said you bought a deal, you sold it, and now that property is tens of millions more. Maybe you can talk to us about this buy and hold philosophy a little bit more so we get it.
Well, the main thing is that I was buying properties and selling them, say for buying at $1 million or $2 million and selling them for $2 to $4 million. Those buildings that I sold for $2 to $4 million are over $50 to $100 million today.
Oh my gosh.
If I just kept the first 4 of them, I'd be richer than I am today over the 60 years.
That's a lesson and a half. So let's just repeat that. Your first 4 deals, buying them for $1 million or $2 million and selling them for $2 to $4 million, which by all accounts, double your money with a couple of $1 million. As a young man, I'm not sure how old you were then, but I'm sure you were a pretty young guy.
Yeah, I was probably in my late 20s.
Late 20s, making that $1 million. Back then, it must have felt like I'm the man. I'm on top of the world, right?
Right.
But Sam just said, that after hundreds of deals later, he would have made more wealth had he had just kept those first 4 properties than all of the work done afterwards. Golly, what a mindset. What a mindset, Mr. Freshman. Well, I guess here's to whoever's looking at buying and selling a deal today. It's 2021. we'll find out where, decades later, and see if you're buying or selling. Now,
That's right.
woo, it's hard. It's a lesson right there. Well, Mr. Freshman, is there anything else that we did not talk about today that you wanted to share? Anything else, at least for this, we'll call it segment one, because I want to get back in touch with you and your world. But at least for today, is there anything else that we didn't get to touch on that you really wanted to share?
Well, I think what I'm always learning is be careful the people you're working with. You want to, if you're going to actually go into partnership, it's one thing to just have a discussion, meet them for lunch or whatever, and pick up some general knowledge. But if you're going to become a partner, you want to check them out, just like a lot of my friends who are in this, they consider their partners and employees the same as the properties in terms of doing the research, do due diligence on the people that are going to be important in your operation. It's surprising what you can find out today. And because it's the people that you work with. This is not something that you do by yourself, right? And so you want to have people that have good reputations, that have not gotten involved in any criminal matters, that sort of thing. For example, we will lend to people. For example, we do a lot of bridge lending, gap and bridge lending, and we'll lend to somebody if they've had a bankruptcy, but had a good reason for it, like in 2017 or something. We had a big crisis a number of years ago, and a lot of good people did lose their properties. But if they've been involved in something that's a moral problem, a crime or something of that nature, then I don't care how rich they are, or how good the deal looks, we're passing.
Time to pass. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that's something that I think isn't taught often enough.
Very good.
You want to be very careful of the people that you're dealing with, and it's not their character is more important than their wallet.
Agreed. All right. Mr. Freshman, thank you very much. It's been amazing hanging out with you. And thank you for being so generous with your time, giving us a little bit of insight into your world. And I'm excited to one, stay connected with you, learn more, and then help share as much of the insight as I can from the knowledge and expertise that you have, my friend. So thank you, brother. Thank you.
Okay. We're always looking for good deals. So you find a good apartment building. There's one more thing.
Please.
And that is why do we always want at least 200 units? Okay. The reason for that is that the cost of operations is, the bigger the property is, up to a certain extent, the less it costs you per unit. For example, if I'm going to buy a 25 units, I'm going to have to pay the manager $30,000 or $40,000 or something, right? On the other hand, if I buy 200 units, I only have to pay them maybe 3-4 times that. So the cost it's not the cost of the manager, it's the cost per unit. So a 200 or 300 unit building has a very, very low cost per unit from an administrative standpoint. And you can buy, and things are cheaper to buy in the quantities. You can sometimes buy refrigerators, stoves, things of that nature for say a 300 or 400 unit project, if you were building it, for a fraction of what you're going to have to pay if it's a 10 or 12 unit building.
Yes,
So
sir.
it's because people look at it and don't always understand that it's cheaper to run a bigger property than a smaller property.
Mm-hmm. The
I
the
think
money's a little bit more accessible too for the loan, the lending. The money's a little bit more accessible than a $2 million deal. It might be easier to get a $20 million deal as long as the mechanics are right. Yep.
So you want to stretch to the maximum you can get.
Yes, sir. All right, Sam, thank you very much. Again, I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Abel Pacheco. I'm your host for the Five Talents podcast. Go like this show, like it, rate it, review it, subscribe, however you think about it. Just provide some support because we have amazing guests like Sam that gets to join us. And do me a favor, go to any one of his, the Amazon store, go buy any and all of those books. Support. I think you're going to get a lot of knowledge. For a few bucks of those books, I think you'll find a way to create a lot of wealth through that knowledge. So thank you so much, Sam. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. I'm truly humbled and grateful. And thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Abel. It was good. I enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to making a deal with you somewhere.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Five Talents podcast with your host, myself, Abel Pacheco. Each week, we're going to bring you interviews from industry experts and commercial real estate investors who follow their dreams and achieve massive success. Before you leave, let me ask you a few questions. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you learn something valuable? Was your mind stretched to what's possible and what you can achieve? Do you want other experts just like the one you heard today? If you answered yes to any or all of those questions, then please take a moment to subscribe to the Five Talents podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and most importantly, leave us a written review. Tell us what you liked, tell us your favorite guest, give us any feedback. I'm excited to learn and improve so you can get a more valuable show. So thank you again for subscribing to the Five Talents podcast.